A stark paradox flickers in a blurred photograph dated March 1944. German prisoners of war, shivering in threadbare uniforms, cluster outside a sprawling American camp. Yet inside, according to a broken radio intercept recovered months later, rooms hum with warmth, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and fresh bread. How could enemy soldiers, hardened by the brutal Russian winters and bombed-out Berlin tenements, find refuge in captivity warmer than their own homes? The image itself seems almost staged, a quiet rebellion against the grim narratives of war. Why did this anomaly, this soft contradiction, evade the scrutiny of German command for so long? What secret did the American camps hide behind their barbed wire? The origins of this bewildering reality trace back to late 1942, when the U.S. War Department, anticipating a flood of Axis prisoners, prioritized humane treatment as a strategic tool. A memo from the Quartermaster Corps outlines plans for well-heated barracks and adequate nutrition aimed not at comfort alone, but at compliance and intelligence gathering. The cold calculus was ruthless. Better treatment might yield cooperation or at least reduce resistance. A carefully preserved blueprint of Camp Hereford in Texas reveals radiators connected to a coal-fired boiler system, a rarity compared to the freezing barracks typical in Europe. Was this warmth a calculated psychological weapon or a genuine humanitarian gesture? How did the German High Command interpret reports, if at all, that their soldiers found themselves in conditions far superior to the front lines? The core design of these American prisoner compounds was unprecedented. According to archived engineering plans, each barrack was insulated with double-layered wood paneling, heated consistently to 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, temperatures often unattainable in German winter homes. Food rations exceeded Geneva Convention minimums, supplemented by Red Cross packages and farm-fresh produce from local suppliers. Yet, internal reports from U.S. camp commanders also note logistical challenges. Maintaining heat across vast, often remote installations was costly and vulnerable to supply disruptions. How sustainable was this model? Did the warmth extend beyond physical comfort to erode the prisoners' resolve? Or was it merely a fragile illusion, masking deeper vulnerabilities in prisoner management? The first trial of this approach unfolded in early 1943 with the arrival of the 17th Army's captured infantrymen at Camp Aliceville, Alabama. Expectations among German officers were grim, anticipating squalor, deprivation, and harsh guard brutality. Instead, testimonies recorded in post-war interrogations describe heated rooms, clean bedding, and surprisingly cordial interactions with American guards. One faded photograph captures a group of prisoners playing chess beside a crackling stove, a scene incongruent with the brutal battles they had endured. Could warmth and relative safety reshape the psyche of hardened soldiers? Why did the German military intelligence fail to fully grasp the implications of this unexpected treatment on morale and loyalty? News of these American practices filtered back to the German High Command through fragmented channels, escaped prisoners, intercepted letters, and covert reports. The response was swift yet conflicted. Instructions circulated among POW units urged resistance to cooperation, emphasizing discipline despite comfort. Meanwhile, propaganda departments struggled to reconcile images of suffering German civilians with tales of enemy captivity that seemed preferable to home. Engineering manuals adjusted to improve insulation in barracks near the Eastern Front, but resource shortages limited effectiveness. How did these countermeasures impact the evolving dynamic? Was the warmth inside American camps a strategic advantage or a psychological vulnerability exploited by Allied forces? By late 1944, the situation reached a turning point. The rapid advance of Allied forces increased prisoner numbers exponentially, straining camp resources. Yet, despite overcrowding, heating systems and food supplies were maintained with near-military precision. A rare logistics report maps fuel shipments and ration distributions, highlighting a prioritization of POW welfare even amid battlefield chaos. This paradox intensified German frustration and confusion. How could the enemy sustain such conditions when their own populations endured bombing and starvation? Did this sustained warmth in captivity contribute to shifts in prisoner behavior, compliance, or even collaboration? And what did this reveal about the broader strategies underpinning the Allied war effort? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. As winter gripped the Midwest in December 1944, whispered rumors among German prisoners began to circulate. Tales not only of warmth, but of unexpected liberties. One clandestine diary entry, smuggled out by a sympathetic guard, describes a makeshift choir assembled in the mess hall, voices rising against the backdrop of crackling fires and the faint aroma of coffee. These moments of normalcy clashed violently with memories of the Eastern Front's frozen trenches and relentless artillery barrages. According to survivor testimonies, the contrast was disorienting, fostering a sense of unreality. How did these conditions influence the prisoner's sense of identity and loyalty? Could comfort within captivity sow seeds of disillusionment with the Reich itself? Behind the scenes, camp administrators wrestled with the implications of their own success. Official correspondence from a camp commandant reveals a conflicted tone. Pride in maintaining order and humane conditions, yet unease over reports that prisoners were becoming complacent, even cooperative. Psychological assessments, however rudimentary by today's standards, suggested that warmth and adequate nutrition were undermining traditional resistance. Field interrogators noted increased willingness among prisoners to share tactical information, sometimes voluntarily. Was this an unintended consequence of the American approach, or a calculated outcome of a broader intelligence strategy? And why did German counterintelligence fail to anticipate or counteract this shift effectively? The logistical backbone enabling such conditions was a vast network of rail lines, coal supplies, and local labor, often drawn from nearby civilian populations. A rare supply ledger from Camp Sandusky, Ohio, details monthly deliveries of over 50 tons of coal, alongside crates of fresh vegetables and dairy products. The juxtaposition of such abundance against the backdrop of wartime rationing in Germany was stark, yet this abundance was precarious. Winter storms and enemy sabotage attempts occasionally disrupted fuel flows, forcing temporary blackouts and ration cuts. How did camp leadership mitigate these vulnerabilities without compromising prisoner welfare? And did these moments reveal cracks in the carefully maintained illusion of benevolent captivity? In March 1945, an incident at Camp Grafton, North Dakota, cast a sudden shadow over the otherwise orderly existence. A group of prisoners staged a quiet protest, refusing to exit their heated barracks for roll call. Guard reports described the scene as tense but controlled, with officers swiftly negotiating a resolution. The protest, unusual given the camp's conditions, hinted at simmering unrest beneath the surface warmth. Internal memos speculate that the protest stemmed less from discomfort and more from frustration with uncertainty and isolation. Could the warmth inside these walls have paradoxically intensified feelings of imprisonment, creating psychological pressures unanticipated by camp planners? What did this reveal about the limits of material comfort in controlling human will? Meanwhile, German military propaganda seized upon these anomalies with a mixture of envy and suspicion. Leaflets dropped over American lines questioned the loyalty of prisoners, enjoying luxuries denied to their own families, painting them as traitors or collaborators. However, intercepted communications indicate that many frontline soldiers were unaware or unwilling to believe the extent of American generosity. How did this disconnect affect morale on both sides? Did the warmth of the camps inadvertently deepen fractures within the German war effort? And to what extent was this a battle fought not with bullets, but with perception and psychological endurance? As spring approached, the camps faced new challenges: an influx of prisoners from the collapsing Western Front and the logistical demands of sustaining warmth amidst growing numbers. A detailed map of Camp Butner, North Carolina, reveals expansions of barracks and heating facilities, showing a relentless push to maintain standards despite mounting pressures. Yet, behind these improvements lurked a growing tension between duty and empathy, order and chaos. Guards reported increasing instances of subtle fraternization, shared cigarettes, and whispered conversations across the fence. How did these human interactions complicate the stark roles of captor and captive? And what did this fragile warmth conceal beneath its surface of civility? By May 1945, as the war in Europe neared its end, the American prisoner camps stood as islands of unexpected stability amid continental upheaval. A faded aerial reconnaissance photo of Camp Hereford captures orderly rows of barracks, their chimneys emitting steady plumes of smoke against a bleak spring sky. Inside, temperatures remained consistently above 18 degrees Celsius, a stark contrast to the devastated German cities many prisoners called home. Yet, a confidential report from the camp's psychological officer reveals growing unease. With the Reich collapsing, warmth and shelter began to feel less like refuge and more like gilded cages. How did this shift in context alter the prisoner's perception of captivity? Was the comfort that once soothed now a source of bitter irony? Simultaneously, intelligence summaries from Allied headquarters detailed a marked increase in voluntary repatriation, requests, and expressions of cooperation among German prisoners of war. According to these documents, the humane treatment and relative comfort provided by American camps were instrumental in fostering compliance and reducing resistance. However, some interrogations hint at a deeper strategic calculus. Prisoners, insulated from the chaos of their homeland, found themselves detached from Nazi ideology, their loyalties quietly eroding within heated walls. Could this transformation have been anticipated, or was it an unspoken collateral benefit of American policy? And why did German command underestimate the psychological power of warmth and well-being in captivity? Behind the fences, subtle but significant cultural exchanges unfolded. Photographs from the camp archives show prisoners tending small vegetable gardens, participating in theatrical performances, and even receiving informal English lessons from sympathetic guards. These activities, while encouraging morale, blurred the lines between enemy and ally. Memoirs describe moments of awkward camaraderie, shared meals, furtive smiles, exchanges of news from home that complicated the rigid structures of wartime enmity. How did the sustained warmth of the camps facilitate these exchanges? Did such interactions undermine the German military code or offer a fragile bridge toward reconciliation? Meanwhile, logistical challenges persisted. A supply manifest from June 1945 details dwindling coal reserves and stretched food rations, forcing camp administrators to innovate, implementing coal-saving measures and ration adjustments without sacrificing the minimal comfort levels. Despite these constraints, heating remained a priority, underscoring its perceived strategic importance. Yet, whispers among guards and prisoners alike spoke of mounting tensions, uncertainty about the future, and the psychological strain of prolonged confinement. Could material warmth compensate for the growing emotional coldness of captivity's endgame? And how did these conditions shape the prisoners' readiness to reintegrate into a shattered post-war Germany? In the final days before repatriation, reports describe a complex atmosphere. Relief mingled with apprehension, gratitude shadowed by fear. A rarely seen snapshot shows a group of German officers gathered around a stove, their faces illuminated by firelight, exchanging guarded words. The warmth that had once been a surprising comfort now symbolized a fragile limbo between war and peace, captivity and freedom. How did the experience of American camps, warmer than their own homes, reshape these men's understanding of survival and dignity? And what lasting impact did this paradox leave on their memories of a war defined by extremes? The repatriation process itself unfolded with unexpected complexity. Official transport logs from late June 1945 reveal staggered departures, each train loaded with men who had spent months, sometimes years, living in conditions far warmer than their homes back in Germany. One grainy photograph captures a group of prisoners stepping onto a cold platform in Bremerhaven, their expressions a mixture of relief and hesitation. The bitter North Sea wind cut sharply, reminding them of the harsh realities awaiting beyond the camp gates. How did this sudden return to scarcity and ruin affect men who had grown accustomed to heated barracks and reliable meals? Was the warmth in captivity a cruel preparation for the coldness of liberation? Inside Germany, the contrast was jarring. Letters smuggled out of camps during the final months often mention the shock of returning to bombed-out cities, ration lines, and fractured families. According to a post-war oral history, one former prisoner described the impossible warmth of the American camps as a distant memory, eclipsed by the cold hunger and suspicion that greeted him at home. This emotional dissonance raises unsettling questions. Did the comfort experienced in captivity deepen the trauma of reintegration? And why was this psychological fallout absent from immediate post-war planning and support for returning soldiers? German military archives, accessed years after the war, include fragmented evaluations of the POW experience. Some officers condemned the American approach as a form of psychological warfare, using warmth not only to preserve, but to pacify and manipulate. Yet others acknowledged its unintended effects. Prisoners returned physically healthier, but mentally altered, often questioning prior loyalties. How did this duality influence post-war attitudes toward the conflict and reconciliation? And what did it reveal about the power of environment in shaping the human spirit under duress? Meanwhile, American military records highlight the strategic debate that accompanied the camp's operation. Internal memos from the War Department reveal a tension between operational cost and psychological benefit. Heating thousands of barracks was expensive and resource-intensive at a time when fuel shortages loomed. Yet, the prevailing consensus framed warmth and humane treatment as vital to maintaining order and extracting intelligence. Was this policy driven by ethics, pragmatism, or both? And how did it set a precedent for the treatment of prisoners in conflicts to come? The legacy of these heated camps lingered long after the last train departed. Memoirs and interviews collected decades later recount a shared disbelief among former prisoners that captivity had offered a paradoxical refuge, warmer and safer than the homes they once defended. A faded postcard, mailed to a family in Bavaria, bears the simple inscription, "Here, we are warm. There, we are cold." What does this paradox say about the nature of war, captivity, and survival? And how does it challenge our understanding of humanity amid the machinery of conflict? Decades after the war, a series of declassified interviews with former American camp guards and German prisoners uncovered fragments of a shared, unspoken truth. One guard recalled the quiet tension in the winter nights, watching prisoners huddle not from cold, but from an invisible weight, the uncertainty of freedom and the ghosts of the past. Prisoners, in turn, spoke of the warmth as a fragile veil, offering physical comfort, but never erasing the deeper chill of captivity. A well-worn journal found in a former POW's belongings ends with a haunting question. Was this warmth a kindness or a cage? How do we reconcile these contradictory memories, where warmth both nurtured and confined? What lies beneath the surface of this paradox, hidden in the spaces between survival and surrender?